Welcome to the Telos Care Podcast, where faith meets formation. Thanks for joining us today as we have conversations around biblical counseling and how to bring hope and healing to a hurting world.
Today I want to begin with a verse from the book of Job. If you have a Bible and you want to follow along with me, you're welcome. In Job chapter 3 and verse 25 is where we will begin. Job chapter 3, verse 25. Now you are familiar with the book of Job. Job had everything in the world, right? And then he lost it all. You know, the book of Job is interesting because the premise of the book of Job is Satan goes before God and he says the only reason why Job is so good and has such good testimony and lives such a good life and the reason why he's so faithful is because you've blessed him. In other words, Satan was saying, he loves you because he's got it made. Why wouldn't he love you? And Satan's, his claim to God, you strip all of that away from him and watch him curse you. You'll see what he's made of. And God's reply, that's not Job at all. He loves me because he loves me. I'm paraphrasing and reading in, but the gist of it is Job is sincere. He's authentic. He's genuine. He doesn't just love me because I've built this hedge around him and I've blessed him and he's wealthy and he has everything that he wants. And so go ahead, do it. Give it your best shot. And Satan takes everything from him, his kids, his wealth, the loyalty of his friends, down to just everything is gone. It's wiped out immediately. And then, Satan comes back. Well, you put some pain on him. Okay, you've taken away all the good stuff. But go deeper on this. What the devil is doing, he's upping the ante. You make this man suffer. You make him feel pain and watch him turn on you. And so, God says, go after him. You can do anything you want to him. You can't kill him though. And so he gets boils. He's terribly sick. I mean, the man is just, he's in horrific pain now. And guess what? Job doesn't curse God. He doesn't lose his faith. He doesn't lose his integrity. In all of these things, the Bible says Job sinned not. And sometimes we don't know where difficult times are coming from, right? We don't know what's going on. And in Job's life and in his circumstance, there was a spiritual warfare in heaven all around him. It was more than just what he could see. And a lot of things come out of the book of Job. It's a rather dark book. But two, it really does have a message for us because, if I evaluate my life, do I love God because he's blessed me or do I love him just because I love him? Am I faithful only when it's going well or am I faithful when it's going horrible? And through all of this, Job has no idea what's going on. And in your life and in my life, we often are there. We just don't get it. It doesn't measure up. why things have happened the way they have, and why did life go left when I wanted it to go right? And we just don't have an answer for those things, right? You ever feel that way? Yeah, I certainly have. So, Job 3 in verse 25, Job makes this statement. He says, "For the thing which I greatly feared is come upon me, and that which I was afraid is come unto me. For the thing which I greatly feared is come upon me." Obviously, Job had in his mind this impending doom, this dread. And he's blessed, he's got wealth, he's got a family, he's got all these good things, he's got health, he's got friends. But in his mind, he's thinking, what if I lost it all? What if it all just one day just ended and I lost everything? All of the things, Job said, that I have feared have come upon me. Now, in the world of psychology, we call this catastrophizing. In other words, if it's bad, it's going to happen. If I can see a catastrophe coming in my life, I'm thinking about it, I'm dwelling on it, I'm ruminating about it, I'm fearful of it. And a lot of us have that headspace. That's where Job was. He was thinking in his mind. I mean, on the outside, he's living a great life, but in his head, he's fearful that the rug's going to be pulled out from under him, and he's going to lose everything one day, and who knows? Maybe Job came from nothing. We don't know anything about his backstory. Maybe he came from adverse poverty, or maybe he saw great loss in his life. But he's thinking and he's dreading that maybe one day it's just gone. And there was this built-in anxiety about that. There was this built-in fear of impending doom. Now, when you think like that, everything that comes in your life that might be good, that might be a blessing, you're always thinking it's not permanent. It could go away. And guess what? In this life, it might. It can. And sometimes it does. But if you live your life always with this impending doom, catastrophizing, it's generally an unproductive way to live. What do you mean? Like I say, hey man, I heard this job offer. It's a great opportunity. Man, all you got to do is show up and it's yours. And you're thinking, it's probably nothing. It's probably not going to work. They're not going to want me. Oh, maybe I'll get it and then they'll fire me. You see what I'm saying? That's that impending doom. Self-doubt, insecure, you're anxious about it. And if you live that way, if you show up, you're probably not going to do well, right? And we have this thing that's called a self-fulfilling prophecy. And the way that works is, well, it probably won't work out because I've got this, impending doom, this doubt in my head. And I know it's not going to work out because nothing ever works out for me. And then what happens when you have these words that come out of your mouth, because your words frame your reality. And so what happens, I show up late, or I call off, or I just don't follow through with something. And they say, I don't think this is a good fit for you. And then we say, see, I told you, I was right. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And it comes out of these negative mindsets where nothing is good, nothing ever good happens to me, nothing ever works out. And then it falls into this category of a self-fulfilling prophecy. And then sure enough, the outcome comes just like we predicted it. And it validates your thinking in that way. And so you live this life and you say, well, nothing ever really good happens to me, happens to everybody else. And it can create a victim mentality. It can create a very negative experience in your life, because if as a man thinks, so is he. And so if I'm showing up every day with doubt and fear and doom, that's going to be my reality. My thoughts are a good predictor of my emotions and an excellent predictor of my outcomes. It has a huge determination. Now, there are other events in play, of course. The effort that I put in, the choices that I make, but so much of that is determined by my mindset as well. So if my mindset is the opposite, the job opportunity is presented to me and I say, wow, this is what I've been waiting for. I've been praying for this. This is going to be great. This is going to change my life. And if I show up with that mindset, I'm going to work harder. I'm going to come early. I'm going to stay late. I'm going to do all those things. My outcome is going to be very, very different than if I have that negative mindset, believing it's going to fall through. When's the next shoe going to drop? All that kind of thing. And so your mindset does create a framework for your reality and the outcomes in your life in that way. Now, no matter who you are, you can be the most positive person in the world, and guess what? It's probably going to rain today. But the positive person says, it's all right. I got a raincoat. I got an umbrella. I'll be okay. The negative-minded person says, another day is ruined. Another day is wasted. So your mindset really is a factor in so much of your outcomes. And somebody with a positive mindset takes that negative outcome and they get up the next day and they go right after it. They don't stop. They say that the average millionaire goes bankrupt 3 times on average. What happens, they have an idea, they have a plan, whatever, and they put everything in. But their mindset is, it's going to work out. And so the next thing comes along, and they put it all in, bust. But their mindset is, I believe in myself. Next thing comes along, bust. Then something else comes along, and it works out. I mean, the stories of people that have fought their way to success are multiplied by millions. I mean, the stories are countless of the people that just had the mindset, they believed in themselves, they wouldn't stop, they wouldn't give up, and it finally came through. So your mindset has a tendency to either stop you or put you down, bury you, kill every dream, or it has the ability to continually stoke a fire in your gut until you get it. And I believe this. I believe everyone in this room has a lot of stories of things that didn't work out. But I believe that every individual in this room is a person of value, possibility, worth, potential. And these aren't words. I'm not just blowing smoke here. I really believe this. Who am I? I'm a poor kid from the east side of this town that lived in abject poverty. Had nothing, zero. So, mindset, good questions, good feedback, but you've got to believe in yourself. As I mentioned, I was raised in a very dysfunctional family, knew extreme poverty as a kid. I was the first adult male in my family in 2 generations that had went to college. I didn't know that was a possibility. I thought you grew up, you got a job, you worked, and that's it. And when I went to college, it was like I felt like I didn't even belong. And I felt like I sat in a room like this, and I felt everybody in that room is better than me. They had more opportunities. They had a better life, a better start. And I was the kid that got in class and worked full time at nights, getting off at 3 a.m, showing up at class at 7:45. Student loans, I didn't know what a student loan was because I wasn't raised in that type of family. All I knew is that you get up, you go to work, and you live life. And so my point is, you got to have the right mindset. And I was not reared in a positive mindset in our home. Just the opposite. Because that's the mentality. And that's why many times poverty is generational. Because you live in that mindset, you grow up in that mindset, you carry it on, and you carry it in your life, and your kids, they hear the same mindset. And the issue is, am I willing to break that cycle? Am I willing to think different, behave differently? And again, the stories are incredible. Recently I listened to a podcast and Oprah Winfrey was telling her backstory. Raped when she was a young teenager, just all kinds of horrible things, grew up in horrific poverty. And now she's probably the richest female in the world, right? My goodness. And when she went into the biz, she didn't look the part, right? She didn't have the look. She didn't have the background. What she had was the mindset. And she proved to herself that she could do it. So many of these stories. It's easy to relate to some of these stories of famous people because, they're part of our history in our life, right? Pop culture. The story of Sylvester Stallone selling the idea to the movie Rocky, and they didn't want him to play Rocky. They wanted, and he said, "No, and they're making a movie about this, strangely enough, and I think it's I Play Rocky." And anyway, he had nothing. He got so broke. He was scrounging for food. He had to sell his dog. And so, he stayed true to his stuff and he believed in himself, and the rest is history. But there was a lot of rejection. And that's the way that most success stories go. There's a lot of rejection. There's a lot of failure, but the mindset is incredibly strong and they believe in themselves. And so Job struggled with the same stuff that you and I do, this impending doom. And I'll give you something else on Job. I'll give you another verse. In chapter 30 in verse 20, he says, "I cry to you and you do not answer me." A lot of time is passing in this story, and Job's friends come to him and they turn on him, they judge him. His wife says, "Well, why don't you just curse God and die?" And he gets to this point where he prays and it's like God's not even there in his life. He feels all alone. And if you read the Psalms, there's a lot of the Psalms that read like this. The psalmist is praying and seeking God, but God's not there. They're in distress. They're in, all of this turmoil inside, and God's not answering, and they feel alone. Why wouldn't there be negative thoughts? And why wouldn't there be this thinking of, I knew all of this was going to happen to me one day, and it sure enough did. And I was alone then, and I'm alone now. Those are common human experiences. So don't think for a moment that this Bible is just some dusty book that's just about history and stories akin to mythology. Not at all. It's extremely relevant. To me, the Bible is the greatest book of psychology that's ever been written, because it's so, it puts on display the human heart and the human moments of distress so plainly. So, where am I going with all this? Attachment. Attachment is a word that's used in counseling, psychological research, literature, etc., etc. It's the idea that when we are born, that we are naturally attached. We are connected. Let me give you a working definition. John Bowlby, a famous British psychologist who would be referred to as like the father of attachment theory, said this. He said attachment is the lasting psychological connectedness between humans. So let me put this in maybe frame it in theological terms, because I want to do a little bit of teaching here. You are created for connection. When you were born in your mother's womb, you were connected to her by an umbilical cord. Your life was connected to her. You are created to be connected to another. And then what happens at birth? The baby comes out of the birth canal and the umbilical cord is cut. It's severed. We're detached. And then what happens immediately? So on that note, when you're born, that's the first trauma of your life. You are traumatized. You're connected. You're thrust into this world. The cord is cut. That's your first trauma. And then what mama does is what mamas do best. They take that little baby and they put it right to her skin. And she connects and caresses and cuddles with that little baby. And the baby feels connected with mom. And so the baby is always reaching up to mama or daddy. It is an innate desire. You are born that way. You're born to be connected. And in human relationship, when we feel separated, when we feel alone, detached from humans, it impacts you psychologically. And here's the kicker. It also impacts you spiritually. Because the way we connect with our biological parents is often the way we see God. Now, let me give you just a couple thoughts on this, because I think this is an important and valuable concept, idea to learn. Attachment is learned, is the learned way you relate to people that you care about. It's how you feel about closeness, trust, and getting support. It is shaped early in childhood with your parents and caregivers. So, in attachment theory, there are different ways, different styles in which we attach. Now, if you were raised in a home where there was a healthy relationship between the mama and you, or daddy and you, or a caregiver and you grew up typically feeling pretty secure, emotionally and relationally. However, if you grew up in a household like I did, where mom and dad were very much distracted by life and there was a lot of chaos in the home, you grow up with an idea of an insecure attachment style. And so there are a lot of different categories of attachment style underneath this umbrella of insecure attachment. The basic takeaway thought on this is that if that happened to me, let's say mom was there sometimes, or dad was there sometimes, but not all the times, it might result in, the way I grew up, the way I see life, it's a little insecure. I don't know if someone's going to be there for me. I don't know if someone's not going to be there for me. And when that happens, often that translates now not only into relationships in my adult life, it results also into the way I view God. And so both of those can have negative impacts. I mean, if I'm very insecure in my attachment with another human being, a significant other, a wife, a girlfriend, doesn't matter. If I'm very insecure, what happens? I become clingy. I become demanding, maybe hyper jealous. All kinds of bad stuff can happen or come out of me in that if I'm not secure in that. And likewise, if that happens in my relationship with God, if I'm insecure about Him, I start feeling like Job a little bit, like I'm all alone, that God has just moved off the scene. He's not real. I don't feel connected with God. I do the things. I show up. I'm religious, but not connected. And that is hugely problematic in your spiritual and emotional life. So let me give you a few thoughts on this. You are created for attachment. You are created for connection. We're born that way. Even in the Bible, when God sees man, He says, it's not good for man to be alone. Most men get in trouble when we're alone. If you're drinking alone, you got a problem. A lot of bad stuff happens when a man is alone. We are so much healthier, not unless you're praying or worshiping, or something like that, right? But a lot of times, put a man in a room by himself alone with a closed door and a phone, guess what that man's doing? I mean, men don't need to be alone. We need to be engaged, and we need to be connected with people that we care about. And also, just emotionally, psychologically, God's put something in the man to be a protector, a provider, kind of there. I mean, He's put this thing in you to be the man. And when we feel disconnected and insecure in those relationships, it does result in a lot of negative behavior. When I see a guy that is controlling, overly aggressive, very hyper jealous, I see an insecure man. I mean, I don't care if he's, 6'5" and, looks like Atlas. He's typically, if he's behaving like that, what I see is a little boy inside of a man body that wasn't connected or was disconnected at some point in his life, insecure, afraid, and inside he's alone. And he's desperate to keep what he has. And so what comes out, jealousy, control, all of those things. And that's generally the stem and the root of the ugliest things in our society, like domestic violence. And the list goes on and on and on. So, connection, we're talking human relationship, but we're also talking spiritual relationship. So where did all this begin? Let me give you a little bit of history. Back years ago in the research labs, there was this guy by the name of Harry Harlow. And Harry had this idea to study monkeys. And so what Harry did was, and this is an awful experiment that would never happen today because we have ethics and standards and we have PETA for crying out loud, right? But what they did was they separated baby monkeys from their mama monkeys. And so what Harry did was this was the experiment, literally, this is the experiment. So he takes these two, and I'm using these chairs to illustrate this, but he makes a fake mama monkey. And this fake mama monkey, there's wire here, and he puts a bottle that's going to give the baby monkey milk, and he puts a fake head on it, and here it's just wire mesh. In other words, mama isn't comfortable. She's not warm. She's not cozy. But over here on this monkey, got the monkey mama head. There's no bottle on this one. But this one has the nice monkey fur. Oh, it's soft. It's nice. It's warm. It feels good. Feels like mama. And so Harry puts the baby monkey that's been separated from his mama in the cage, and his assumption is that the only reason that the baby goes to mama is to get fed, and because the baby is safe there. And if mama couldn't feed that monkey, the monkey wouldn't need her. That was his assumption. But what happens when the baby monkey comes and checks these two mamas out, baby monkey gets the milk from the wired mama monkey. And then once he gets his milk, he comes over here to the monkey that's soft and warm and cuddly and stays with this monkey for connection, even though this monkey mama doesn't have milk to offer. And what we learn from these experiments, and he like switched it up and did all kinds of things, but the answer was always the same, that the monkey went to the soft, comfortable mother versus the mother that could feed him. And what Harry realized is that our need for connection and belonging is more important than the basic food we need to stay alive. And so, before these experiments, the world of psychology was very humanistic. And they had this mindset that even in humans, the only reason why we love our parents, kind of like a Job mentality, is because they feed us. And what they realized that from these experiments is that in all nature, whether it's human or animal or whatever, that we are born in such a way where we need to be connected. We need to feel loved. We need to feel safe with somebody. It's more important than the food that we eat. Now, what happens is when you don't get that as a child, it disrupts your whole sense of security and identity. And it has a way of showing up negatively in adult relationships, and it has a way of showing up negatively even in your spiritual life, because we view our Heavenly Father through the lens of our earthly parents. So why are we talking about this? I think it's important that we understand why we do the things that we do and have perspective on this. Now, as you look at the history of this idea of attachment, it kind of even goes further than that. For example, there was an experimenter. Her name was Mary Ainsworth. Now, this was an experiment in the 1970s, and Ainsworth had this idea. She said, we've got to look at this from a human lens and not just monkeys in a laboratory. And so what she did was she began to examine interactions between parents and children. And these studies have been replicated over and over and over again. She did an experiment, and it was entitled The Strange Situation. And so what she would do is kind of like have a daycare setting, right? And mama drops the baby off. And what happens when mama drops the baby off at a daycare? Right? Now, some babies settle down, calm down, play with things. Mama comes back. Mommy, I'm so glad to see you. And they're reconnected again. That would be secure attachment. Okay, the detachment happened, but then the baby goes right back, loves mama. And then as she does that more and more, the baby gets used to it because he knows or she knows that mama's coming back at the end of the day and everything's going to be okay. But then some kids were dropped off and they got mad at mama. And when mama came back, they didn't want anything to do with mama. They don't even look at her. Or when she comes through the door, they're screaming and yelling and all upset and need to be calmed down rather than happy to see mama. And so what Ainsworth determined from this was that we attach differently to our parents, and some have a very secure attachment and some have a very insecure or anxious attachment. And then what we've learned is that attachment style follows us through life. And that's the way we typically show up in relationships. So we've talked about the insecure attachment maybe being more anxious, more needy. What about the avoidant attachment style? That's somebody in a relationship that shuts down. They're not available emotionally. They can't connect, not with their kids, not with their wife, not with whoever. And then an argument happens. Oh, I'll just sleep in another room. I'll just leave for a few days. Avoidance. You run from it because that's the only way you know how to handle it. And so outside of a secure attachment, there are many levels and labels that they give to these insecure attachment styles. But the bottom line is we grow up typically in a home environment that follows us, that travels with you. Now, I would say this, even if you say, I hold in me the characteristics of some of the things that you're saying. The great thing is that all of us have this ability to change and to be better. And you may have some of these tendencies and you may connect the dots, and you may say, yep, that comes from childhood. Yep, that comes from whatever. But all of us have the ability to be secure, because ultimately our identity is in Christ, and that's where we find ultimate security. So the basic needs in attachment, I'll close with this, are esteem. You need it. You need the idea or the sense of achievement, to explore, to learn, belongingness, and love. Those are things you need. Safety. And you need this biologically and psychologically. These needs are often, you need to feel esteem. You need to feel a sense of self-value, belongingness and love, safety, and biological and physiological needs must be met. I mean, that's your basic food and water and shelter. You need all of these things. That's how we grow and mature in a secure sense. And when those are not present, we generally grow up very insecure, and we generally try to seek and find them in numerous ways. And so what that can do, if someone grows up very insecure, very needy, we find those needs met many times in toxic relationships, alternative cultures, subcultures, addictions, you name it, in so many unhealthy ways. But I am of the opinion that all of our needs can be met in Christ. God is the great God of redemption, and He recycles those things. And so, with that, have a great day. God bless you.
Thank you for listening to the Telos Care Podcast. We hope today's conversation encouraged you to reach in and grow, and reach out to bring hope and healing to your community. Hit follow on social media to stay up to date, and hit subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode.